My face currently feels like I've been run through by Tom Stewart.
Puts it to the top of the square. Oh, beautiful little fist in there by Dale. Crucial centimetre moments.
He definitely has a bit of the Belcho spirit, as I have a bit of the Belcho spirit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to The Back Pocket, the only podcast that plays their home games at home, their away games away. My name's Alistair and I'm joined as always by Jack. How you doing?
It must be a luxury to do that, mustn't it? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I mean, you play your home, like if your home games are being at home and your away games is working, you do everything at home. You're like an MCG tenant, basically.
Yeah.
You play most games at home, even if it is working. So,
I'm
it's
so
a silly
confused
debate.
by the analogy.
Me too, sorry.
There is no away game for me.
No away game.
Don't have an office.
You're the buy round. It's
Insult.
it's such a silly conversation that keeps happening because it's not had about GWS or like, for example, Port Adelaide playing Collingwood next week, which would be a sellout at the MCG if it was there. Like, if those teams wanted to keep their old suburban home grounds, they could have done that instead of selling their home games to the MCG for money from the AFL in the 90s.
Unpopular opinion, unless it is something that is guaranteed going to get 80,000, everyone should play Geelong at Geelong if it's Geelong's home game. I don't care if it's Collingwood, I don't care if it's Hawthorn, I don't care if it's Carlton, I don't care if it's Essendon.
I saw a Collingwood supporter on Twitter yesterday basically saying that, like, as a Collingwood supporter, they think they should play their home games, like their away games in Geelong because it's Geelong's home ground.
I still don't think it's enough, but I think 50,000 capacity, Collingwood plays there.
The funniest part is people being like, well, they told the AFL it would be finished, and it's like, so it's their fault the steel didn't arrive? Like, it would be if the steel had got there.
It's almost like there's been unprecedented situations happening for the
like
past 3 years.
Some stuff happened, like a boat got lodged in a canal, and there was a pandemic, and now there's a war.
Which boat are we talking about? Are we talking about Suez?
Yeah, Suez. Not the Ruby Princess, but that was like another thing that didn't help.
There's many boats.
There's many boats. I will start with my votes, not my boats.
Hey, that rhymes.
That's not quite a segue, but it's a rhyme way.
It's a water vehicle.
A segue. My one vote this week was and there's a big gap between my one and my top four. My top four I thought were all super impressive, but my one vote is to Brady Hough for West Coast.
Interesting.
I thought he was really good in an 81-point loss. He kept Charlie Cameron to 7 disposals and 2 points. He, on his own, had 22 disposals at 86%. He had 5 intercepts and 14 marks and got 1 vote from each coach in that game in an 81-point loss. Only West Coast player to get a vote.
Well, there you go.
Well done, Brady Hough.
Fair enough. My blinkers completely on for that game because it
was such a glazed over eyes kind of game. But yeah, the impact he had on Charlie Cameron, especially considering I gave McGrath votes for doing a similar job earlier this year. Hough in there as well.
I don't have Hough in my special mentions, but I actually do have 2 West Coast players in there.
Okay.
I'll just quickly knock them out. I thought Jeremy McGovern was pretty good on return. Almost like he hasn't been injured the whole season, but he was pretty good. And I thought Jaden Hunt has continued to be really good for them.
Hunt was good. Yeah, I had McGovern in mine as well. So that's fair.
Sweet. Same game, same vote.
Same income.
Harris Andrews is my
not the
one.
same income.
No. Different income.
Harris Andrews is in my special mentions.
Yeah.
He was brilliant.
It's the West Coast discount. It's rough.
He's so good, isn't he?
Depending on I feel like. Do you get the West Coast discount because he's still playing on Oscar Allen?
Yeah, and did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And he just marshals games at the moment. Mm-hmm. Like he was in my special mentions, and really the only way around him and Hough swapped was because Hough had a much harder task in my eyes.
No, that's totally fair.
But yeah, I can't blame you for having him in there. Quickly
rattle it off: 13 marks, 12 intercept possessions, 7 pressure acts. Low metres gained, but that's not what you want from Harris Andrews.
Yep, no.
He's stopping.
I'm happy for him to kick at 20 metres because he knows that his long kicking isn't his strength anyway. So, yeah, he was really good. My 2 this week was Sam Taylor.
Same.
My top 4 rotated so much this week, but 19 disposals, 13 of those were contested, 13 were intercepts. He had 9 contested defensive one-on-one wins. Didn't lose one.
It's pretty good.
10 spoils, 9 pressure acts, and 4 tackles, just to go with 8 marks, 5 intercepts, and 4 of those marks were contested. So, wild game.
I think we all know how good Sam Taylor is.
They are so much better now that he's back.
Yep.
I think that was part of the problem for a while there.
I feel like he and Haynes are a really good combo.
Yeah, I was surprised that he was a sub this week.
It is strange, isn't it?
But maybe it was that
Considering he
they
was pretty much
were
best
more
on ground
confident they
last
were going to
week.
beat Hawthorn than it ended up being. But yeah.
Yeah, well, when the game started, I was like, big percentage win on the line here. This could be huge for
and
them.
they needed it for if they're going to make finals.
Thankfully, Hawthorn showed up this week.
Yes, even without Sicily.
He was back this week, so maybe he'll get some votes again.
All right, on to 3, I guess.
Yeah, so you go again.
Basically, podcast favourite royalty at the moment. Isaac Quainer was my 3.
He's my 5.
He's your 5. He was my 5 until I just couldn't justify having him above the next 2 I've got.
Yeah, fair enough.
But another incredible game, wasn't it? And a game where they needed a player like him to step up. 26 disposals and 10 of those were intercepts. 13 marks, 8 of those were intercepts. Only had 2 one-on-ones, 1 on both. 3 tackles, 2 spoils. 9 coaches' votes, tied for best on ground with Nick Dacos, who the media had as by far best on ground, but the coaches clearly didn't.
No.
He's jet. He's an absolute jet.
Yeah, and I think this is the 5 comes body of work. Like I've been gassing up Quainer for weeks now.
Yeah, and I was so happy to tell you I gave him 5 too, and then I got him 2 spots.
Nah, it's all good. 6 rebound 50s to go with that as well. I don't know if you mentioned. But yeah, he is a very, very mature player. I'm not exactly sure how old he is, but he's going to be very good for them for a long time.
Yeah, and he's... I've told you about it before, been on my radar for ages just because he had that wild draft combine skills-wise. And that skills is such a huge part of his game. Like his disposal efficiency is sometimes, I think, lower than it is fair to be because he tries to pull off some insanely good kicks out of the back line that set them up down the ground.
89% this week, though.
And yeah, that's what I mean. Like when he hits them, they're out. And it's a big part of why Collingwood are able to do what they can do. You and I were talking about
Risky.
Lipinski earlier. When they've got players like him, both Dacos's, Lipinski and Pendlebury delivering the ball forward, it just allows their runners to kind of haphazardly head down the ground because they've got the skills to hit the targets. And yeah, his game on the weekend was a big part of that. And the Bulldogs looked good until really the end of that game.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, on to
My
your
3.
3.
Yep, my 3 is Jacob Wiedering.
Got a special mention from me.
Yeah, not the biggest numbers game, but it was sewed up for me when I saw the stat that over the past 3 or 4 rounds, he's the number 2 intercept player in the league.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to cut that out on my microphone because that is hectic. So if you hear a bit of silence on my end, that's what it's for. Yeah, no, I totally get that. He's been stepping it up. And it's obviously Carlton's looked a lot better for it. His defensive work's been fantastic.
It's been a real
his ability, I think I said a few weeks ago when I gave him a 1 or a 2,
Mm-hmm.
his ability to fill space is so influential. Like Hawthorn that game, I think it was, had no marks inside 50.
Yeah.
Because of his ability to just block off those runs and leads, which he does so well.
And, Fremantle less so, but over the past few weeks when he has been number 2 intercept, he's been playing on King and Mitch Lewis. And I think body of work-wise, worthy of a 3. He looks a lot better when he's intercepting and then stopping, not stopping.
I agree
intercepting.
with that. My 4 this week went to Aliria.
This was a mean one for me. I left
Left him
him
out? Yeah, I thought that must have been the one you left out, purely because of how insane my 5's game was, so I'm guessing it's yours as well, but we'll get to that.
No, I've done my 5.
Alia, 10 spoils, had 14 one-on-ones and didn't lose any of them. He beat King so bad that he got subbed off on one disposal. Had 12 of his own at 92%. 8 of those 12 were intercepts. 7 of those were contested. Similar ratio, 7 marks, 5 contested, 6 intercepts. He's so important to them, especially when they lost Mackenzie.
Yep.
And he basically had to play... They love having multiple of that role if they can in that team. And he was basically the only one that could do it. So, yeah, in my votes there with a 4. So who was your 4?
Stephen May.
Stephen May, yeah. That was my 5.
I thought about giving him 5, and then I was like, I don't like Stephen May. He's a cunt. No, I'm kidding. I had to give it to Quaynor this week, but yeah, Stephen May's game. You're going to go through the numbers, but
I saw someone tweet, I was a St Kilda supporter, just said, I don't care for Stephen May. But yeah, his numbers were phenomenal. He had 29 disposals at 86, 13 intercepts, 5 rebounds, 12 marks, including 1 probably mark of the year contender, 8 intercepts and 3 contested, 10 coaches' votes. But then, the other part of the game, 5 spoils, 6 pressure acts, and 2 tackles. Also was involved in the incidents, all 3 incidents, which involved Cordy, Ross, and King being injured and going off. King tried to spoil May, knocked his own shoulder out. Cordy was trying to chase May while kicking, did a hamstring. Sorry, Cordy got knocked out by him, and Ross was trying to chase him and did a hamstring. May did nothing wrong, but St Kilda players were just dropping around him. What a game.
Yeah. Look, I could have tossed back and forth about giving him a 5, and I probably should have in the end, but hey.
Like I said, I had Quainer at 5 at the start of the week, and then May's game just kind of pushed it over, especially when I remembered how close Melbourne were to losing that game at matches. So yeah, May kind of pulled it over the line for me.
What is that? I'm trying to do the maths on where everyone is now.
I think that might take... Andrew's 1 vote might save him, but I think it might take May very close to the top. He's had a few really strong weeks. And also, Lever was really good as well, just to throw in there. And Luke Ryan I also had as my one other mention.
I have I have 2 dishonourable mentions.
Oh yeah? Okay, go for it.
Your fave, Luke McDonald.
Oh my goodness. That was the funniest thing. I can't believe that happened.
He's not their captain, Simpson's their captain.
No, he's a co-captain.
Oh, he's co-captain.
Yeah.
That was embarrassing.
Almost
every possession he had was just a turnover.
It was a turnover.
It was just feeding Geelong players.
It was that 50-metre penalty, which is one
shocking.
of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen. He ran from so
I
far away to
then
tackle him.
complained to the umpire. Everyone had stopped. And my other dishonourable mention is Brandon Walker.
He had that awful final against Collingwood last year, and Freo fans were gone on him, and he missed, I think, the first few weeks of this year because of it.
He's not been bad this year.
His bad games are horrible.
I saw nothing on the weekend from him, and that's really disappointing because I think he has been solid for them, and their defence has been pretty decent. But yeah, that was really disappointing.
I had one other special mention actually, who was Blake Hardwick, who kept Toby Green goalless for the first time in 19 games when he last played on Blake Hardwick.
He's the Toby Green killer.
Yeah, apparently. The reason he didn't get a vote for me is that Green still had 11 score involvements and 2 shots on goal. So
I don't know if that's so much killer.
Yeah, but Blake Hardwick had a pretty good game on his own. They almost won that game, and keeping Green goalless is always impressive. But there's also the factor that Green still had a pretty big impact on that game.
11 score involvements.
In a low scoring affair, he was pretty important. But yeah, it was a pretty good week.
That's the votes. The votes are done.
The votes are done.
We'll see you all next week, guys.
Stuart Dew's dead, apparently, according to Gold Coast social media.
The rest in peace photo on the website is
so strange.
Very, very strange.
It didn't look like they've just sacked a man. The big head in the sky. It's like the Simpsons Homer on the sitting on the bonnet of the car. R.I.P. Stuart Dew. It does leave him as the most successful Gold Coast coach.
Yes.
With a winning percentage of 30%, which is rough for them. He spanned 4 North Melbourne coaches, 7 if you count caretakers. What happens to the Suns? At what point does it become unviable for the AFL?
If after Damien Hardwick or Ken Hinkley sign a 5-year deal with the Suns and they still don't make finals, then it's...
I've been seeing...
Oh, but the money's still there.
The money's there for South East Queensland, right? Yeah. That's the thing for them. But we talked about it the other day that since the new teams have started coming in since 1987 or whatever it was, no team has taken more than 10 years to make finals or even win a final. And Gold Coast are at 13 this year, and they're almost definitely not going to make it with the run home they have. I'd be crazy if they did. But
dead cat bounce, that's what they're after.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's any team that loves losing to the dead cat bounce, it's St Kilda, and that's who they've got this week.
I thought Richmond were the bunnies for that normally.
It was another one where it was, why not bother waiting until the end of the year at this point to sack Stuart Dew? I don't know what the benefit is.
Because they can start
communications with
Hardwick now.
Flying over to wherever he is in America to go and have a chat to him.
Question. Do you reckon he's high for his first official meeting with the Gold Coast?
I hope so. He's in LA, right? I like the idea that, I'm seeing all these articles about whoever takes over Gold Coast is in prime position because I've got this young list. And it's like, that's exactly what all the articles were saying about Stuart Dew when he took over. Like, it's so primed to take over. They've got all these high draft picks and the talent's there and they're almost making finals. And then it's kind of been the same.
I feel like Stuart Dew was more of a rebuild coach. They lost players in that
He did a
period.
really good job of building a core there, and they've signed on.
He wasn't in charge of the horrible deals that led to them getting rid of
Coming
players
in
like
and they're
Bose and
like heading into each season, $500,000 to $1 million over the salary cap and having to slice that back every year. It was a hard spot to be a coach in because there's not much you could do with that. Like, you couldn't poach talent either.
Would things be slightly different if they had a mature Jaeger O'Meara,
Stephen May, Tom Lynch,
Isaac Rankin? There's so many players that they've lost, and they get draft picks, but then they draft young players, and the cycle begins.
And they just keep being this team of really talented youth.
They've got lots of
like I said the other
players.
day when they lost the pick that became Brayshaw to Freo, and they got Ballard out of it, who's been fantastic for them. But like the problem was getting Weller is one, he's injured a lot, and two, like he's never been that midfielder I think that he was expected to be because he had to be one of the most mature kids in a team of kids.
Yeah,
which is kind of like the Daniel Rich scenario I think in a way where a young player is forced to be the most talented young player. They don't get to grow the way they're meant to as a footballer. So it's just a cycle for them at the moment, I think, that's really hard to get out of.
And they've got talent there that's staying, which is good.
Yes.
And they've got young players who look good, like Flanders and Holland.
Powell. Obviously.
And there's one that I'm forgetting, Humphrey.
Oh, really like Humphrey.
So, I don't know, I see upside. They've got a lot of academy kids coming through, which is really good. So I definitely see a possibility where they make finals as soon as next year. Their midfield's really good.
I mean, I had hopes for them to do it this year until they started dropping the kind of games that Gold Coast drop.
It's every year. But that's what they need, someone like a Damien Hardwick
who won't
through.
accept that, for sure.
And I know Stuart Dew specifically has been touted as being, even though this week I've seen people say he was sacked because there were relationship issues, but all I've heard out of there that he was really good with communication.
You don't
with
have players sign on like they have there if the coach isn't good with the players. Like that, they've.
So I'm not sure about that. That might just be Gold Coast's.
They've had less hemorrhaging of players than ever since he's been there.
Yeah, I think Isaac Rankin's the worst one, and obviously the Bose issue, but that's
they kind of pushed
separate.
Him out. He wanted to stay. I'd want to stay on that much money too, I guess.
Yep.
But, another one, I kind of touched on this. I wasn't going to bring it up until the podcast, but we got a message about it the other day.
Did we?
Unless I'm going to hear about every person in WA who gets done for drink driving, I don't need to hear that Cam McCarthy got done for drink driving. Like, I don't think that he's a relevant enough person to be in the sports section for just copping a breathalyzer test.
I think there's not many Fremantle players who would be relevant enough.
Like, if Pavlich got done for drink driving.
But that's what newspapers do. They push issues by putting these big scandals
and also
on the back that
that's
aren't
the West, right?
really anything. Although 0.414, that was
it's
pretty bad.
that's weird.
But like, that's just what they do.
Yeah.
Like, I pay no attention. I saw the drink driving team of the week, and I didn't even know who was the new one. So
yeah, well, neither did the person who sent it to us. They're like, I thought that was years ago. I was like, no, that was yesterday. And that was when I wrote the note. But I feel like it's not even it happens so often. Like, so many people get done for drink driving that it's not like a football involved in a notable newsworthy event. It's just a thing that happens all the time.
Marlon Pickett, that was a notable newsworthy event.
Like that. Even if he was a former player, that one's like a big thing. Like, that would be mentioned.
It was Jake King and Tyrone Vickery's money laundering business. That was a good one.
Didac in the back of the car. With
Richmond pretty bad at it, apparently.
Didac in the back of the car was a good one. In a drive-by, I was sleeping. Okay.
You missed out on some good stuff like steel side bottoms walking out the wrong door.
But before,
that's why we kind of need those stories.
He's
you
a
get dumb
current
shit.
and popular player. McCarthy hasn't played in eons.
Yeah, true.
My favourite one I think I ever heard, and this is before Dane Swan discovered Twitter, and I learned that he was an absolute brain rot of a man. But I remember him talking about one time he woke up and had like 10 missed calls from Eddie Maguire. And he was like, what have I done?
Yeah.
And he picked up the phone and he called Eddie Maguire, and Eddie Maguire's like, Dane, your pub's burnt down. Yeah. He's like, oh, thank God. And he's like, what? And he's like, I mean, yeah, it's bad, but I thought it was going to be much worse. So, like, obviously players are so switched on to the fact that you can't do anything. Like, Stephen May is such a good example a few years ago when he just had a beer and there was a journalist there taking a photo of him, or someone sent it to a journalist. And it's like, the microcosm in WA, Adelaide and Melbourne is insane for AFL players. Like, I feel like that's why a lot of players do enjoy playing in like Sydney and why someone might want to move to the Gold Coast. And weird that they haven't been able to make that more of an advantage. But the talent's probably a big issue with that, like in terms of success. But
I think their problem is they're too, well, at least at the point recently, they're very eager to sign players and will take someone like a Brandon Ellis on a 5-year deal for big money, who would probably get a 2-year deal somewhere else for much less.
All my list I made earlier of premiership players that I, one, either didn't know who they were, or B, did not know they were premiership players. Jacob Townsend, after he won the flag at Richmond, Gold Coast signed him immediately, and he played like 2 games for them.
Yep.
So yeah,
unfortunately, that was body issues. He was really good at Richmond.
He was, had some real skills, especially were very high. But it is a tough one, and signing on young players constantly to long deals does hinder their ability to bring players in. And like obviously, a lot of clubs rely on bringing players in to rejuvenate.
GWS. He went to GWS.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and then he went to Essendon. Oh no, sorry, GWS, Richmond, Essendon, Gold Coast.
Yeah. Had something. Oh, sorry, I was going to say, Brisbane have managed to make that a good factor for them. Like, they have become a destination for players who have a lot of pressure on them or are under that microscope and don't want to be. Like, they did a really good job of pulling in players like Danaher and Cameron and now Dunkley, who might not want to be under that constant pressure. So, like, it'd be good if Gold Coast can get that going because it clearly does work. And making your location, when you're not a Melbourne club, making your location advantage is huge. Like, it took Geelong a long time to do it. Now it's their biggest strength. West Coast manage it all the time. And I think Sydney do it pretty well as well.
I think Gold Coast's issue is their stadium's in just a really shit spot.
Yeah, it's not great. But, yeah, I just think that they could do it, though. Like, the lifestyle on the Gold Coast is obviously something that...
I think they've definitely had players pick up, like, look at fucking Lockie Weller. There's no way he didn't go to the Gold Coast because he wants to fucking surf.
Absolutely.
So I think it just has to be the right kind of player, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I just hope they do well. I've always liked the Gold Coast.
I have no problem with them. I hate it when people call them a franchise side.
Everything's a franchise side, isn't it? Like, they've been around for 13 years.
Yeah.
We just need Tasmania to come in so they can be...
people won't call them a franchise team.
No, that'll be Tasmania.
Yep.
I mean, if they get a team now with the weird protests about having a stadium when that was the one way the AFL was going to give them a team. I don't think they needed a stadium. I don't think that they...
They got 2.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think they needed a new one because the way they were pulling in crowds against Hawthorn, who were a big enough team anyway...
Why don't they just redevelop those stadiums?
Redevelop them or just at least play there for the first few years. GWS are playing out of Blacktown, like before Showgrounds got redeveloped to Giant Stadium. Like, you don't need the big stadium right away. Carrara got redeveloped while Gold Coast were there. It was small when they started. I think that it would have been fine to have a Tasmanian team playing from those 2 grounds, which have enough seats for a Tasmanian team. There's not that many people in Tasmania.
I don't know how many people are in Tasmania.
Yeah, well, in any one city, there's not enough to justify a huge stadium, that's for sure. And I think that once they had a team, they wouldn't be travelling to go see the game from Hobart to Launceston. They'd be waiting until the team came and played in the city. But now if they're going to be based in one city, then obviously they might travel more. But it's going to be tough. And the same is going to happen like people, because Perth's so spread out, people who live rural don't want to come to West Coast games on a Sunday afternoon or a Friday night because it's too far.
Yeah.
And the same would be true for a Tasmanian side now because people aren't going to want to travel from Hobart to Launceston or vice versa to go and see a game if it's on a night that's going to be inconvenient.
The AFL should have promised light rail.
Light rail.
That's how you get a team.
Bullet train.
Tasmania's bullet train. You get on it for 3 minutes.
You have made it from Hobart to Launceston in a snap. I mean, comparable to Japan, Tasmania's reasonably sized, and they've got bullet trains.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really bad at sizing things in my head.
I think Tasmania
feels
much
so
small because Australia is so big.
Yeah.
Like, there's countries the size of Tasmania out there that have trains.
That have more than 12 people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. There's some really populous countries out there the size of Tasmania, which, is a pretty empty place. I mean, a lot of Australia is though, right? But Tasmania, I think, is the weirdest one because it's got the things that has made other countries so populous in terms of rain and soil and minerals and whatever. But no, it's too cold.
Not talking about minerals anymore. Let's get to the important stuff.
The important stuff.
Okay, 1. Who's going to win, North or Hawthorn?
Oh, Hawthorn. With Sicily back?
How much?
5 goals.
Like, enough to be embarrassing for North Melbourne?
Enough that North will look pretty rubbish being beaten by a team that's also down that low.
Yeah.
Like, this is a North team that struggled to beat West Coast, and Hawthorn beat them by like 120.
That is true. But
as we were asked this week, who wins an AFL game, 22 Mitch Marshes or 22 Alex Carey's?
Mitch Marsh.
It's Mitch Marsh, right?
Look how fucking
that was a
tank that man
mobile
is.
utility who's strong. Like, he was touted to be...
Did you see the wife beater underneath his shirt?
I'm a Mitch Marsh fan. He's a unit. Although, if he hadn't got his eyes fixed playing cricket, he would probably struggle on a footy field.
Oh, he could just wear the Mason Cox sunnies.
Oh, yeah, he could have, yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
I don't know how that works, but...
Me neither.
Why isn't North versus Hawthorn being played in Tasmania?
That's a great question.
Why is
Like,
that?
that
why
should
is that
be-
not a yearly fixture
That's
for
the
those
game
two?
that should be there, right? If any should be. I feel like it has been before.
But why isn't it this year?
I don't know. It should be.
They're going to get.
Especially when they're both struggling.
They're going to get what? Struggle to get 30k
They'll
at that
get
game,
pretty much as many at the MCG as they would at Tassie. And Tassie would at least like it.
and the teams would probably make more money because Tasmania would give them money.
Yeah. That's a great question.
Right.
You raise a valid point. I don't know. Why isn't Geelong playing Essendon at Essendon home?
Fuck it, just play it at Tullamarine. All the fans can come for free and stand around.
Yeah, get in the car, get the cars out, sit in the boot.
Yeah, you couldn't hear it, but I rolled my eyes really hard just then. All right. As per requests by someone, I don't even know if they listen to the podcast.
Oh, excellent.
What's your game of the week?
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. This week?
Yeah.
It is... I had one, I thought. Do you have yours?
No. It's Melbourne-Brisbane, right?
It has to be. I think Melbourne-Brisbane has the most interest to it, but I think that it will... Either way it goes, I think it will be a big win. I don't think it'll be a close game.
And obviously I have a vested interest in it because it's my own team.
Carlton
I think
Port
Carlton
is, I was
Port's a
going to
huge
say,
game.
that's a big game for Game of the Week style.
Because I think Port might take it a bit easy knowing they have Collingwood next week. If they have anyone under a cloud, they'll rest them, right?
Actual game of the week, in terms of I think it will be a good game, is Gold Coast and Carrara.
I don't think any game featuring St Kilda's a good game.
I mean, close.
It'll be interesting to see how they respond.
I thought it would have been. I already thought it was going to be a close game before Dew got sacked. I thought in Carrara with St Kilda's not very high scoring game plan with no King, I thought that Gold Coast would push them pretty close, if not win. Dead cat bounce does funny things to teams both ways. Like, it could either be a massive loss or they could come out firing.
Well, that's what I was wondering. What if they really did like Dew?
And they just drop the bundle?
They just don't care.
Yeah, it'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
It would be the quickest way to get the higher up sacked.
Yes, yeah. It's crazy how in situations, especially like Gold Coast, and we've talked about West Coast this year, how the attention is so much on the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not... West Coast we've talked about is clearly not... The major part of the issue is not the coach. There's other stuff going on there. Gold Coast has to be looked at the same way now, right? Like, it's been 13 years. The coach can't be the problem.
I don't know when people are going to learn that it's everything.
Yes.
Geelong don't win the flag last year if they don't refresh their assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Melbourne don't win the flag if they don't have, what's his fucking name? Choco Williams
Yeah,
in the background
absolutely.
orchestrating things. It's not just...
Sam Mitchell at West Coast as well. Like, the
Yeah.
players even said, like, without the way that he carried them through that final series with his experience, they wouldn't have got there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so true, and Geelong's a great one because they changed so much and even brought Mackie into the recruiting department with Wells to do some other stuff and like bring new faces in. That yeah, when players just call or fans just call for the coach to be gone, it's so confusing because the coach has such a limited what they can do. Like, they don't control the list for starters. They're not the be all and end all at match committee. They're a voice on the match committee for selection. They're in charge of an overall strategy and like management of players. And like West Coast's, you can't manage what they've got and the injuries they've had to a certain extent. Like they proved that when they're playing properly, maybe they can play a bit better like they did against St Kilda. But that also comes down to what we've talked about with St Kilda's inability to put teams away because they don't have the scoring at the other end of the defence. Mm-hmm. So I think there's another part of West Coast looking good because of that.
I think there's also, like we've on this podcast said, how long can Adam Simpson last? But that's simply just due to that down to how long could that man take what's happening?
Like I said to you, like it's almost at a point where surely he'd be happier just working as an assistant coach. Richmond are the home for rehoused former coaches. Like, surely Adam Simpson would be happier being an assistant coach at a rebuilding Richmond, just in the background, working with a line of players or a core, than
You'd assume so.
just being hounded by the media week in, week out.
There's no world where I wouldn't take Adam Simpson as an assistant coach at my club.
Absolutely. Like,
in a heartbeat.
he's clearly a good coach, and like was before West Coast collapsed due to COVID, continuously successful. Like, they were good. Like you said, they finished 5th like just before it all collapsed.
Yep.
It is a strange one. I don't know, but I don't know what the solution is, because so many teams have proven that you need a full revival, but that usually includes the coach.
And I think the only one recently where we've seen where it has been successful without it is Damien Hardwick.
Yep.
And now he's left his club to potentially go to another one.
I think he'd be crazy too straight away as well. Like, if his reason is true, and his reason for needing to step away from Richmond was that he had burnout, I can't see why he'd want to come back and coach a club in 2024.
6 months off, though.
Is that long enough
If you
to like fully refresh?
If you were offered 6 months off right now to refresh and you have to start again in 2024, I know your job's a lot less stressful than being a head coach. You'd take
Paid
it.
a lot less as well, though.
You'd take it.
Yeah, I would.
He's currently probably still being paid by Richmond.
The ultimate one is Clarko, isn't it?
He's living in America. He's hanging out in America smoking weed.
Yeah. I don't know if he has been paid by Richmond because he stepped away rather than being
I'm
sacked.
sure there would have been a little.
So the ultimate one is Clarko, right? When Kennett basically forced him to be pushed out by the club and Mitch to replace him, and had to pay him for 2 years.
I mean, Stuart Dew's going to be getting paid for this year and next. So.
Yeah, well, not as much, because Gold Coast have
they've got the payout.
Yeah, so they only have to pay him a fraction, not the
it's only
whole thing.
because West Coast aren't.
I learned recently how the soft cap works with coaches. And it's something, I think it's that for every amount you go over it, you pay a 200% tax. So if you go $500,000 over the soft cap, you pay $1 million to the AFL for that year.
Hold on. So you're saying that if they wanted to, a rich club like Collingwood or West Coast could just eat that fine.
That's why
that's
it's a soft cap. Yeah.
stupid. That is absolutely
And people have talked
garbage.
about West Coast doing that. But it is still a lot of money, even for a club with a
Oh,
lot
of course.
money.
Yeah, of course. But like...
But yes, it is kind of messed up.
in a competition where the only thing you want to do is win a premiership, why wouldn't you?
Because it was built in to prevent basically what Collingwood had done in the early noughties, when they were just had this...
I remember their facilities were...
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. When the Lexus Centre got built and they had about 20 coaches in there, that was why the AFL brought those rules in. But like, it's quite funny that, you know, they were doing better before that. Like, like Collingwood challenged for multiple premierships and then got the new facilities and this big list of coaches, and then kind of dropped off for a while. And then the AFL brought the soft cap in and they dropped a bunch of their coaches off, and the Lexus Centre started being shared with the Netball Centre, and then suddenly, woof, they're a good team again. So maybe that's also not the be all and end all.
Yeah, I don't know. Coaching's weird, man.
Running an AFL football club is an insane proposition. Like, there's just so many
Can't imagine it.
layers and levels to it.
It's when you've got boards and you're answering to them, but you also have to answer to your fans. You've got
they're
coaches,
paying memberships,
and players, and
you
those
have to
players
answer
are
the AFL because you're technically a non-profit organisation.
and those players are like the be all and end all of your club.
Yeah.
If you have a Dustin Martin or a Jordan De Goey who's off doing whack shit, that's going to affect everything top down.
PR for footy clubs must be tough, mustn't it?
Oh, I think the turnover would be really high.
Yeah, you'd be out of there as soon as you could. Player agents as well, I think, must have a crazy job, because like, I can't imagine that dealing with.
Well, have you watched the show on Stan?
No, I haven't.
No, because player agents are fucking dickheads.
But like, I can't imagine how frustrating it must be dealing with multiple clubs and your player at the same time. Like, the demands from all three must be wild, and you're like probably sitting there having like the logical solution like in mind, but like you can't do that because that's not best for the player you're representing, and also both clubs want more than the other one.
I'm more interested in the social media side of things. I want to know the appropriate percentage level of whimsy you're allowed
Like, how
to have
much
post-loss.
how much can you meme?
Post-loss.
Oh, yeah. Well, how bad was the one a few weeks ago? The AFL made an error, and it was like on the West Coast 120-point loss to Sydney. They posted Carlton singing the theme song on the West Coast website, but because all the sites are linked, it was just someone clicked the wrong button.
Oh no!
And West Coast, in a wild choice for a football team, don't have their social media department on the weekend if they're not playing.
Okay.
So if they play on the Saturday, they don't work the Sunday.
Was it left up all weekend?
So it was left up until Monday. Which
I didn't know about this.
crazy. Like, I can't imagine being a West Coast fan. You open up the West Coast website, like the first video there is Carlton singing the song after knocking off it was Gold Coast, I think.
I feel like social media managers should just log in on Monday and be like, "Oh, my bad." I would post that.
It's like when they're
supposed to appropriate.
When they're supposed to tough to stomach. You're like, yeah. Well, the fans know that, don't they? They just sat at home and watched that. Well, they probably didn't.
I feel like it would be more like if it was just Sydney won by 100 and how much did they win by?
100. Was it 121 points?
No, it was like 170.
No. They scored that much.
They scored 200.
Oh, they did, didn't it? It was 171 points.
They won by 100. Just if I was the West Coast social media manager, I'd just tweet out the score and go, shit.
Rough.
Woof.
Maybe you go the full piss take and you do the we cry as one.
This is why I can't be a social media manager.
Yeah. Oh man, the things I want to comment back to people when I'm doing social media replies, crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because people, as anyone listening to this would know who uses the internet, people be stupid a lot of the time on the internet.
People be stupid.
I saw an Essendon fan today. It's funny because we were running through the lists of players at other teams. And I saw this after I'd already done it. But an Essendon fan today saying that Geelong can't chase Bailey Smith, even though there's no substantial, nothing real to the rumour anyway at any point yet. But Geelong can't chase him because they've already got so many players from other clubs on the list. And I was like, Essendon have 10 best 22 footballers from other clubs right now.
I didn't check them, but yeah.
There's a few injured, but Shield,
right.
Setterfield, Wright, Caldwell. There's a lot there.
Hind, who might not be best 22.
Hind might not be best 22 anymore, but there's quite a few in their list. And but that's all clubs. We know that now. Phillips is obviously he's not best 22, but he was while Draper was out. And due to player movement, you're hard pressed to find a club that wouldn't have 6 players on their game day team that aren't traded now.
It would be hard to find one that's less than 6.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I know I went through them before. I think the lowest I sent to you was 7.
And it's 10 is pretty common now. Because players play one season at clubs and it just doesn't work out and they find their home somewhere else and play better.
Delisted free agents also helps as well because there's so many players that get picked up and you don't even think about.
Pre-season. And then that's I was surprised that Geelong's 2011 team only had one.
Who was it?
The one at the end, it was Brad Alton still.
Yep.
Because Cameron Mooney dropped out of that side for Podsy Adley and Hawkins to take the 2 spots. And Harley and whatever retired. So, but yeah, most grand final teams have 6 or more.
Yeah.
And in the modern day and age, I think that's only going to go up.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, look at how well Collingwood are doing this year, and they brought in 4 on the off season.
Yeah, and even Melbourne, after all of their high draft picks, you look at your Gorms, your Sharkies, your Olivers, they still had a whole heap of players who were traded in from other clubs. Even players who were fringe players, like your Melchams and whatever, who didn't come into the side. They even had fringe players who they didn't draft. So it's just it's part of list management now.
Ben Brown.
He played in that grand final. But yeah, that's it, right? If you're not looking at bringing in talent from other clubs as part of your list management, you're probably doing it wrong because established talent, you have a higher chance of knowing what you're getting in than with draft.
I think a lot of clubs fall into we need to get stars only.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing you can do to move towards getting a premiership is improve your 16 to 22.
It's your bottom 6, right? Yeah. And that's a huge part of clubs that is underestimated. Stengel turned out to start last year. But even this year when he's not playing his best, it's such an improvement on what was in there before. You look at players Richmond brought in to just cover needs.
I mean, look at Collingwood this year bringing in Frampton
and
Hill.
Great example.
Lipinski the year before. Those are players that aren't going to be in your top 10.
Yep.
But they are going to influence the game enough.
Players who might not get a single Brownlow vote all year. Unlikely to. Or Hill might when he has his days out or whatever. But players who you're not expecting to be in coaches' votes or Brownlow votes, but they cover that bit of the list where someone was just letting you down on game day. It's massive. It is. It's an underestimated part of trading.
Yep.
And Ben Brown was a great example at Melbourne. I know he obviously kicked a lot of goals at North, but Melbourne just needed someone up forward who could present and bring the ball to ground for Pickett and Fritsch. And Brown did that, and McDonald did that when he was up there. But when you have a need filled and you get it filled by someone who's good enough, that's enough.
There are so many premiership players that you look at and go, how the hell are you a premiership player? Remember Lee Brown?
Yeah.
For Collingwood?
Yeah.
Do you know what he did? He brought the ball to ground in their forward line, and that's all they needed from him.
He's a traded-in player.
Was he?
North Melbourne.
There you go.
I
accidentally gave the perfect example.
Yeah, the perfect example. Yeah, came in and filled a role that they obviously had Rocker as their main target, but you can't have one. Like that just doesn't work. And yeah, Brown was a really good example for them. Obviously, Rocker was gone by the time they won the flag.
I was going to say he was definitely gone.
But yeah, like you can't just have the one target; it just doesn't work.
The only time I think it's ever worked is Jack Riewoldt.
Yes, and then they brought in Lynch and they were better.
And they're better because of it.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
their most important player.
Yeah, he is, and we're seeing that now. While he's out, they really struggle. And Rewalt's still having flashes, but
And it wasn't even because of Riewoldt; it was because of their stupid knock it on at all costs game plan.
yeah.
I say stupid because it works.
You know, as soon as Hardwick's gone, Rewalt's got the sleeves on too.
That can't have been a thing.
Yeah, it is. They're talking about it. Richmond's
Oh,
one
I
of those
guess
clubs.
he's an ex-Hard.
He's an ex-Clarkson school of rough nosery.
It's such wank.
It's so silly.
It's like when who was it? Was it Barassi who walked in and told everyone to shave their head? Stupid. It's
so
stupid
dumb.
shit.
Well, I'm glad that Geelong don't have that policy because I've seen Brad Close's arms now. And they're not. It doesn't look like a footballer. It looks like a little boy.
I was going to say, I imagine they're really skinny, but also somehow incredibly hairy.
And white. Like it's like there's a lot going on.
Because he's always wearing sleeves.
Yeah, I know. There's some players that need to wear sleeves. Like Clarkson leaving Hawthorn is the best thing that could happen to Chad Wingard because Chad Wingard is a sleeves player. Like I see, he should be in sleeves.
I genuinely think it's because he left and they brought in Cade Simpson to join their coaching panel. He's like, why aren't your players fucking wearing sleeves?
He's like, do you know how good I was in sleeves? Longmuir at Fremantle, he was a player that looked better in sleeves. He had the like half roll. I used to like that.
I don't mind the half roll.
Yeah.
I like it when the little bit of white.
You can see the white underneath it. It only works with jumpers that don't have the white sleeve.
I think it works especially for Fremantle.
Yeah, with
or
the
at least
dark.
it did when they had the multicoloured one.
the
It
purple.
still works today, but it's not the same.
It worked better at Port for Wingard than it does at Hawthorn. Like the black folded up looked better. But you can only have two players max in sleeves.
Nah. Doesn't your club have like 4 normally?
Nah, it's usually 2. It's usually 2 after half time and close all game. Guthrie will sometimes break it out.
I swear there's
But
definitely
someone
more.
wore it this year. It was Ollie Henry and I was like, take him off.
Yeah. I think...
We can't have 2 sleeved goths in the forward line. That's
I
not...
think your other blonde boys have worn them too.
Yeah, they might have. But they're not best 22 yet.
Nevitt and... What's the other one?
Tui might be gone by the time they're best 22. Dempsey.
Is there another one?
Yeah, I think so.
White? Is he also...
Oh, yeah, White. Yeah, he is. Yeah,
Yeah.
He looks the same as them. Nevitt's
Jesus
about a foot
Christ.
taller and he's shaved. He's got the buzz cut now. So
Yeah,
he's...
you can't tell. I've got bad eyes. They're
Well,
all
that was the
blonde
problem
Geelong guys.
with-
Little.
Ollie Henry having the sleeves on in the wet. And like
Confusing
from
you
a
with
distance, I was like,
Brad
that's Brad
Close.
Close again. No, it's not. Hang on.
Why is Brad Close inexplicably shit today? Oh, no.
Why is he running
Ollie
away
Henry.
from the contest? Oh, he's kicked 4 goals. How'd that happen?
Rough.
I'll knock it for him. It's working for him. He's kicked a bunch of goals this year. Got coaches' votes on the weekend.
He's top 15 goals in the league.
It's wild, isn't it? And like that makes the trade an inherent success. Like just based on that. Where players like Stengel has struggled to find form this year.
Well, he's really just
also
taken
broke his
Stengel's
arm.
goals. So.
Also broke his arm. But then Myers has obviously become a goal assister, not a goal kicker.
What is this, the fucking Hoops podcast? We talked about Geelong like
Yeah,
6
sorry.
times today.
Yeah, my bad. We're talking about sleeves. Greatest sleeve player of all time.
Why is
You're gonna say Simpson, aren't you?
But he's the losingest player of all time, and I love that.
Yeah, that makes him greater, I think.
Yeah.
I can't think of one better.
I think of
He
sleeves,
was
and I think of
iconic.
Houlihan as well.
Yeah, the Carlton jumper looks good with sleeves. 'Cause It's just it's
It's a single colour.
colour. It makes it look better.
You look at like, some
it's
like
what
St
bothers me about
Kilda's, but
North Melbourne and the Kangaroos sleeve jumpers is that unless they're T-posing,
it does look.
They're
a bit
going the wrong
silly.
way?
Yeah.
um,
Trying to think, I really like Zerk Thatcher in the sleeves.
Paul Seedsman
Oh, that's a classic.
is an
sleeves.
absolute classic because he looks good. He's got the
More like Paul
the skinny enough
Sleevesman.
arms that when he's got the folded up at the bottom, he's got like forearms that aren't too skinny, but it hides the.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think there's someone else who's really iconic in my head right now.
I just can't think. Normally I can.
Yeah. It's
But like
because-
Bartel in the wet weather in sleeves.
Oh, Bartel was a good
Especially
one.
when he had the beard. That was something else.
The beard was good. Same as Simpson when he had the beard.
Yeah,
Long
Simpson.
sleeves.
That's
the combo.
And Michael Tuck. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it's about. It's so that's another one with Hawthorn, right? Like you come into Hawthorn, you're like, no one wears sleeves. It's like your greatest like ever player. Maybe not talent wise, but the man won 7 premierships, played in 11 grand finals, wore sleeves pretty much his entire career. and you come into a club and like no sleeves. When it works,
It might
fine.
be fucking snowing, but there's
when he
no
ran around.
sleeves.
When he ran around in the snow, is one of the funniest things I've ever like a schoolboy, just like big smile on his face, running around in the snow.
He's definitely a shithead, that's for sure.
It's gonna be interesting to see how North approach that from here, like easing that back in and whatever.
I think it'll just be as simple as, hey,
When
I'm
he's
back.
ready. Yeah, yeah,
Didn't they already say it's going to be within a month?
yeah. They did.
Yeah.
That means they're easing him, right? That means that there's...
No, I think it's just he wants that extra time off. He's
Ratton. I can't
he's
believe they.
playing
I
Final
can't believe
Fantasy.
that North Melbourne has ruined Ratton's coaching record. Like it was positive his whole career,
not his whole
positive
career.
or equal. Like it
Yeah.
always buzzed around that line, and now he's just gone and coached 7 straight losses. That's brutal.
Yeah, but for the first 3, they looked okay.
They did, yeah. And there was conversation. Remember those conversations
And now
at the
they
time,
look
like
worse.
there was conversations like, oh, if Ratton's coaching like this, do they bring Clarkson back? And now, like the last 5 weeks, we've witnessed is like we bring Clarkson back. I think we do that.
I think having both of them there is good because, like we said, Ratton is a good coach in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
It's
think he's
crazy
a
to
really
think-
good people person, and I think that plus Clarko is a combo. I mean, they worked so well at Hawthorn together.
It's crazy to think back now that
Well-
they won the first 2 games of the year.
Yeah.
Because they've now lost 14 in a row. And
They can't win
they're somehow
until Port
looking
lose.
worse by the week. Like, on the weekend, I think that game levelling out did not have much to do with them. There were some moments of genuine piss-takery, which I think they should have got a spray for. A couple of weeks ago, they had a loss that was similarly bad. Like, the other team just started absolutely trying to do silly stuff, and, like, the game levelled out, but it's just because there was no point injuring yourself when you're that far in front. They keep getting put away really fast. Like, it's quarter time or half time. There's no way of being over. The expected score calculator had the quickest ever team can't win from here on the weekend with West Coast. When it was 8-1-0. It was the quickest the clock's ever gone. Game declared for Brisbane.
Yikes.
So they're having a good year.
That's
And
not good.
they only lost by as much as Richmond. So that's something, right? That's a good sign, maybe. Or Brisbane just kind of went, we've got Melbourne next week at the MCG where we can't win, and maybe we won't destroy West Coast as much as we absolutely can. We'll just chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a little bit more management. It's a 24-game season, or 23 game, it's 24
23,
rounds.
Yeah, 23 is a
I think you're going to see a few clubs. No, they're not going to fully Ross line it. They're not going to drop 7
Blitzar's
players.
being subbed off on 28 disposals at 3/4 time.
And I think that starts as soon as this week.
Yes, as soon as teams are playing games that they've won at 3/4 time, like they're 5 or 6 goals up at 3/4 time, I think we'll definitely see players who are either in need of a rest or might just have a tight hamstring or calf just taken off the ground where they wouldn't be normally.
I had a tight hamstring yesterday.
My calf's still bugging.
I did not enjoy it.
Um,
I don't
like-
think I've ever felt pain there before. I did not like it.
Yeah, my dad was complaining about tight hamstrings recently. He's like, I've never had that before. I was like, well, yeah.
Beth looked at me. She's like, I don't know how to help you. I'm like, I don't think anyone can.
Yeah. I could bend down with my calf again today, so that's nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
No more.
I belong on the West Coast list with a torn calf, I tell you. 29-year-old with a torn calf right at home. Anyway.
Yeah, that's
the
definitely
back
the end
pocket.
point because we're
After,
talking about mild injuries that we have.
from walking around the house. Yeah, we'll see you next week. After there'll actually be some 8 defining games this weekend, which will be really interesting. Melbourne, Brisbane is huge. Geelong, Essendon is huge. Carlton, Port is huge. So I'm actually really interested to talk about those. And a lot of good defenders playing in those games too. So this has been The Back Pocket as always, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.